Welcome to our weekly Diversity, Equity, Inclusion podcast. My name is Pam Noble, Managing Partner in Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity at the Christopher Group. I'm honored to welcome Gloria Castillo, who is a pioneering advocate for diversity, inclusion, social, and economic justice through the lens of business. For 16 years, Gloria has served as president and CEO of Chicago United, a corporate membership organization advancing multiracial leadership in business to achieve parity and economic opportunity for those people of color, stepping down, and to write and speak. Her advocacy focused on racial, ethnic, and gender diversity on corporate boards of directors, diversity in executive management, and advancing business partnership between minority and women-owned firms and corporations. Her work on behalf of the underrepresented populations has been recognized by numerous organizations, including an honorary doctorate in social justice from Roosevelt University in 2017. With that, I'd love to welcome Gloria.
Thanks so much. I'm thrilled to be with you.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. And, Gloria, I'd really like to start the conversation off by saying, you've pioneered this space for over 16 years. And what's different today since the George Floyd moment, and how has that changed the way companies are responding? And how are you advising them differently?
Well, it's such a wonderful question because certainly when we see the civil rights movement of the 1960s, the onus was generally on Black people alone to create the change. And while they had white allies, the white allies were certainly few and far between. Today we see a much broader support calling for change, and we've seen that in marches across the country where you see very, very diverse crowds coming together. So that is a real signal of change. And then secondly, I think in this really unique time where we've had people at home and quarantined in space, that when George Floyd was killed, we were not distracted by sports and entertainment, going out to restaurants. And so we were very much captured in that moment. And for the first time, I think, the entire nation came together and really witnessed a horrific event. And so that led many people to come to a moment of reflection, including corporate leaders.
How are you advising them differently? What are some of the things that these corporate leaders are thinking about as they adjust to this change?
So when we think about the corporate response to Black Lives Matter, we have an entire spectrum. So at one very leading edge, you have a company like Ben & Jerry's, which is calling for the dismantling of white supremacy. And certainly they are on the very far edge and a company that has a long tradition. We have a number of corporations that have a strong D&I corporate commitment. We have those who are putting a new stake in the ground and for the first time making statements. And we have companies that are internally focused, where they're not making public statements, but they're looking at their current D&I operations and thinking about how to do it better. And so when I think about advising companies, I really suggest that think about where you are in this journey right now, what your vision is for your company in terms of inclusion, and then taking the steps that will help you move towards your vision. For many of the smaller companies who don't have a full-time D&I person, that internal focus is the key. And so taking steps to start to create a more inclusive workplace is really where they are. And that might be, if they have a diverse workforce, perhaps starting on a tour of courageous conversations, really listening to their employees, really listening to the concerns, absorbing those concerns, and starting to create an action plan. And there are lots of resources available to companies who don't have a DE&I person on staff. And what I am recommending to those companies is that they visit CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion on the internet. It's a wonderful website that includes a lot of resources. And what a leader can do is really explore what other companies are doing. And all the companies along the spectrum of the diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. And there are toolkits to conduct those courageous conversations. There are podcasts. So there's a lot that can be done. The next thing I'm suggesting is once you have your plan, where do you want to go, let's say, for the next year, the next 3 years? Be ready to articulate that to your business partners. If you have corporate partners, or if you are a prominent member of the community, many are asking, what are you going to do to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion? And it's important to be able to say what your vision is and what your near-term and mid-term steps are going to be. And, that's an important part of being a leader in business today, is to have a clear vision and be able to articulate it.
The one question that I would ask is there a right way? Some companies are making outward statements, some companies aren't. How do you know which direction to move?
It really is a very individual decision for each company, and there is no right way. If you have a long history of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you are comfortable making a public statement, a statement of solidarity that you will put on your website, that you will use in social media, that's terrific. And you should know that your stakeholders will hold you to account for making those statements. If you're early in the journey, it may be that the right way for you is to really start with that internal focus. What do I need to do to ensure that my employees all feel heard, that my employees feel safe, that they have a safe workplace where they can be themselves, and if they are feeling distraught by the current environment, that they know when they come to work that they can be their authentic selves. And you don't need to make a public statement. It's more important that your employees feel that you are demonstrating a personal commitment to listening and creating an action plan. So there isn't a right way to do it. It's really about the culture of your organization and where you want to take it.
What's the one piece of advice that you would give any Chief Human Resource Officer or, CEO as they think about this really dynamic and truly fluid space that we're in right now?
Zoom out 10 years from now and think about your response to the question in that important moment. What did you do? How did you change? And that's really the critical question, because it's a question when you are a senior leader, whether you're in HR or the CEO, is demonstrating your personal responsibility to help create the change today. And that might start with a moment of self-reflection. And I'm advising really everyone to take this time for a moment of self-reflection. I've been in this space for a very long time, more than 2 decades, and I find myself reading intensely, reflecting on things that I said 20 years ago and how I would change them today. So this is a journey we all need to be on in this moment. And there is so much available to us. So no matter your style of personal reflection, there's a way to do this. There are amazing TED Talks that you can listen to. You can go to the New York Times bestseller list and look at some of the great books that are available as resources and will provide a context for your personal reflection. There are podcasts like this one that are creating a space for us to learn from each other. So that's what I'm really suggesting to people. And always with a mindset of thinking about when we engage in advancing racial justice, that we are doing this with a mindset of we are doing this with each other, and I am not doing this for someone else. So we can't take, in my opinion, a kind of paternalistic view of racial justice, because as soon as I say I am going to go and help those people who are not like me, I'm already creating a distance. And what we want to do is think about with. And I always use that, I know it's an old saw, but always use that phrase, nothing about us without us. So whenever you think about coming together, we want to do this jointly. And that for me has got to be at the heart of the self-reflection.
Wow, that's just a beautiful way to end our conversation. I think it gives everybody a moment to pause and think about where they are in this journey. And I appreciate the conversation that we've had today. And thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much. We're all in this together.